Hello and welcome to Helping Other People Excel, or HOPE is the acronym for that. And thank you for joining us today. And we're glad to come into your homes and spend a little time with you and help renew your hope in life, renew your hope in yourself, renew your hope for the future, and just generally bring hope into everybody's lives as much as possible. They say that a rising tide raises all ships. And so if we can raise you and raise your life today by bringing you some new information and encouragement, then we've done our job at raising the whole entire country indirectly. Which brings me to a little poem that I usually start my show out with, and I'm going to just paraphrase it here from memory because it's just easier. But it's from a monk from the 1100 AD, I believe it was, and he said that when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. And I tried real hard to change the world, make a difference, and just didn't seem like I had much success. And so eventually I thought, well, maybe I can just change my country. And so I got involved in politics. This is my version. And tried to work within those means to change the country. And soon I realized that that was a fruitless struggle. I wasn't having much success there. So I thought, well, maybe I can change my community, my town. And so I worked on changing my town, and I had a little bit more success there, but it was still a pretty tough struggle. And in my older years, I decided that, well, I just need to change my family. And of course, these youngsters these days, they don't listen very good. And so I found that I wasn't having any success changing my family either. And in the long run, I realized that I needed to change myself. And so I worked on changing myself, and I finally realized in changing myself that if I would have changed myself years ago, that I would have indeed changed my family, and that my family collectively would have went out and changed the community, and that in their changing the community, we would have ultimately changed our country and ultimately changed the world. And so I just want to encourage you in that. That's always the story I'm trying to work with here, is that we need to change ourselves. We need to work on ourselves. We need to work on our own hearts and our own minds and just try and improve ourselves. And in doing so, we'll find that we indeed will, like a small rudder steers a big ship, we indeed will ultimately change our world. And so be that rudder for the rest of the world and work on changing you, work on making you a better you, be the best you that you can be. And that's what our show has mostly been about since the beginning, is just trying to encourage you, number one, to get your hopes and dreams back, and number two, to try and change yourself to be the kind of person and the kind of man or woman that you need to be to help make that change in the rest of the world. So I'm looking at this nice fishing background here, and the beach and the water and the reeds, and I'm thinking about that, and it reminds me of talking to a friend today about looking for a partner, and how when we're out fishing, if we want to catch perch or trout and we're only catching bluegills, what do we have to do? Well, we have to change the bait. We have to use something different, because trout like something different than the bluegills do. And so when we're looking for our mate, when we're looking for even just working with other people and getting along with them better, we need to use better bait. We need to use the kind of bait that Papa Bob sells. Papa Bob's bait. We had talked to Bob earlier today. But he's got an amazing little spray that he puts on lures that helps you catch fish, and so we just need to learn to have that in our own lives and put that into our own application of, if we change the bait that we make available or visible to others. Just amazing, that you were a Napoleon. And Bunker Bean was, kind of taken back, and he didn't believe that he'd never been anybody famous or whatever. And so she kind of explained to him, she said, well, Bunker Bean, life has got cycles to it. And she said, back then, when you were Napoleon, you were born on the high cycle, and you were a ruler, and you were a conqueror, and you did great things. And she said, and now as Bunker Bean, she said, you've kind of been born on the downside of the cycle. And so, you are who you are, and you live where you are. And he was like, oh man, he was all dejected, and he thought, well, that's just great. I get the fortune of being born on the down cycle. But she called out to him and she said, "But Bunker Bean, before you go," she said, "your cycle is about to come up any time now." And she said, "In fact, I predict within the next few days that you will start to feel again how Napoleon felt. You will start to understand and get that feeling of being that leader and that conqueror." And so she said, "Just keep your eyes open and, your life's going to pick up." So he took off and he got to thinking about it and he thought, wow, man, this Napoleon guy, he seems a pretty interesting character. So he went to the library and he got some information on him and he managed to get a couple of photocopies of some pictures of Napoleon and he pinned them up on the walls in his tiny little apartment there. And every day he would look at those pictures and anytime he had something that seemed difficult, he would think to himself and say, well, how would I have handled this if I was Napoleon? And he'd think about it and pretty soon he'd say, well, geez, Napoleon, he was a strategist. He from his research found out that he won oftentimes his battles before he ever left his tent because he would strategize and plan and work it all out to where he knew what was going to happen and consequently he won and he had this confidence. And so Bunker Bean started thinking, I used to be Napoleon. And she says, I am feeling a little more confident and I am feeling a little more maybe a strategizing technique coming on, and so he started just dwelling on that a little bit and looking at those pictures. Well, sure enough, soon his life began to change and he started to walk a little more upright and carry himself different and he started to take charge in situations. And his boss noticed that he was doing that and he thought, boy, he's be ripe for a promotion, and so he got promoted and pretty soon he was really way up the ladder at his job. And of course, he noticed the boss's daughter, and she started to notice him because he was, carrying himself different. He was a different man, and so pretty soon he was able to ask her to marry him, and he won her heart, and they got married, and so things were going really good for Bunker Bean, and he was running this company, and his father-in-law decided, he's doing so good, I'm going to retire, and he just turned the whole thing over to Bunker Bean, and so he went from this little orphan boy in a small little apartment to being the boss's son-in-law and owning this company. And that was pretty huge. And he got to thinking about it one day and he said, I wonder who I was before I was Napoleon. So he went back to his little old area of town and sure enough, the fortune teller's still there. And so he went in there and sat down. He said, I'd really like to behave more generously. He started to be more giving and more considerate and more benevolent. And he also found that Ramesses was a sharp dresser, and so he got out his clothes and he went down and had them all tailored, and he had some clothes custom made just for him. And boy, how good he felt in those nice clothes. He put his shoulders back and he just felt good. And as a result, his behavior started to change even more. And now as he's more of a leader and more benevolent, and other people start coming to him and people start really liking him, and so they're attracted to him, and his business just started to thrive and it did even better. And now he was really successful. And he got to thinking, he thought, boy, I wonder who I was before I was Ramesses the Great. And so he went back down to the old neighborhood there, and as he approached the neighborhood, he noticed that there was a lot of cop cars around, and he's like, wow, I wonder what's going on here. And he pulled up in his nice Mercedes and his new suit, and he gets out of the car, and image are you projecting to other people to make them feel or see or react to you the way you are? Life is not as it is. Life is as you are. And that's so important, because so many times if we just change our perspective about ourselves, like Bunker Bean did, he looked back at himself in a different light when he found out he was Napoleon. He looked at himself in a different light when he found out that he thought, at least in his mind, that he was Ramesses the Great. And that made a huge difference to him. Where would he have been if that fortune teller wouldn't have told him that he had been those men? Where would he have been? Would he still be the paper boy delivering papers, but now 40 years old and carrying him over a string on his back and throwing him up on the porch and just barely getting by in that little 2-room apartment? He very well could have been. And then you got to ask yourself, well, what about the fortune teller lady? Was she really a fraud? Was she really telling people lies? Or was she really maybe actually a minister to help you think something different about yourself, to help you lift the tide of your life, to help you lift the feeling of yourself and who you are? You know what? God doesn't make any mistakes, and you're no mistake. God made you. He made you who you are. He made you to be victorious. He made you to conquer. He made you to be a blessing to those around you and to minister to other people. And He built you with all of those things built in. And it's what you do with that. It's what you choose to do with that in your life. Life is all about choices. Pastor Gary was talking about that on his show earlier today, about how we have to make choices, and making the right choices is so important. But making the right choices is based on having the right information. And so many of us don't get that right information. So many of us maybe were told we were nobody when we were young, and oh, you'll never amount to anything. And I personally have a family member that was told exactly that. They grew up and their dad always told them, oh, you'll never amount to nothing. You'll never do nothing. You'll never get anywhere. You're a no good. And you know what? He struggled all his life, and he had a hard time because he had a negative perspective. He had a negative attitude. Everything he saw was a result of being victimized. He felt like he was a victim. He felt like that he wasn't successful. He was a nobody, and consequently, he didn't get good things. He didn't reap good things from his life. His attitude was such that his lifestyle and his choices that he made were all negative choices, and consequently, he wound up with very little. And I often think, how could his life have been different if he would have known new information? If he would have had a show like Helping Other People Excel come into his life and into his home and tell him, you know what, you can be something better than that. You can be more. Because he was really a very talented man. He had some very amazing skills. He was a likable guy. He could have been so much more. But he didn't know that about himself. He didn't believe that about himself. He felt like Bunker Bean. He thought he was a nobody. He was very smart. He came up with some neat ideas that are in use today. But of course, he didn't get credit for them because he didn't get it released as quick as he should have, because he just didn't feel like he could do it. And, I feel sad for that fella. And, I was on that same track. I was on that same road. I'd wake up every morning and I'd plod my way through the day because I didn't have the right information. I didn't know that I was something more. I didn't know that I could be more. I didn't know that by changing the way I think, just like Bunker Bean changed the way his thoughts were. And if it wasn't for that fortune teller, he'd have never had those thoughts, and where would he have been? So really, that fortune teller should have been maybe praised and patted on the back for changing people's lives. Maybe she should have been rewarded and said, you know what, you've done amazing things in helping other people exceed and succeed. But instead she was arrested and told that she was a fraud because she told people things that weren't true. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Who's to say? But she helped people. She certainly helped Bunker Bean. And who knows how many other people she helped during her day. And we're in that same position day to day as we run into other people, as we work with others, in whether it's a TV show like I work with Alan and JB and Faith, or whether it's you're working in a factory or you're working at a gas station or wherever you're working. You come in contact with people every day that you could be lifting them up. You could be an encouragement to them. You could literally change their life by just being positive and helping them to be positive and helping them to see themselves for who they are. A slight compliment like, "My, you look wonderful today. You have such a nice personality. You must really get along good with other people. People really like you, don't they?" Or, "My, that was pretty smart. I don't know how you thought of that. You are really a smart person." And give them good praise. Give them good encouragement. Just those little things that we can do day to day with each other. And if we change, we go back to the little saying that I start my show out with about wanting to change the world. If we just change our own perspective, if we just turn the picture a little bit and look at it from a different angle, we can then see that just slight changes in our behavior, slight changes in our attitude can make a world of difference to not only ourselves and not only make us more prosperous and more successful, but also to those around us, that we can raise the tide for everyone. A rising tide raises all ships. It doesn't just raise one ship when it comes in. The tide comes in, all the ships go up. Tide goes out, all the ships go down. So a rising tide raises all ships, and we need to be that rising tide. We need to raise the tide for ourselves. We need to lift ourselves up and encourage ourselves, think good thoughts, be positive about ourselves. Understand and know that God made us to be something amazing and that He put us here on this planet for a purpose. And that purpose is to not only do well for ourselves and show ourselves to be successful, but also to encourage and uplift those around us and help them do better. Because when we help them do better, we will do better. And so I just really want to encourage you. I thought maybe you'd like that little story. I know I sure enjoyed it when I heard it. And you know, I know how that feels. I was that man. I was that little bunker bean. I just didn't think I could do so much. I didn't think that I was anything special. And people used to tell me that sometimes, and I'd say, "Oh yeah, you're just saying that. You're just trying to help me feel better or whatever." But you know, I learned new information. And this information that I'm sharing with you on my show is exactly what I've been learning and what has raised the tide in my life and has helped me to feel more confident and to help me feel better and to help me know and understand that I am somebody important and that I am capable of making a difference in our world. I think so many times today we watch TV and we see all of the negative on the news and all the bad things that are going on in our world, and we say, boy, what can I do? How can I possibly make a difference with that? How can I possibly do anything to fix that? That's just way above me. And as long as we think those thoughts, it is. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right either way. So I want you to work hard this week. Think about what I've said. Think about the things that I've been saying in the show, and I hope that some of them will reach your heart and encourage you and help uplift you and feel better about yourself, and also help you encourage others and those around you. And I just want to keep uplifting you in whatever ways I can. And you know, if this show has been a blessing to you, if it's reached you and touched your heart, feel free to drop me a line. My email address is jim.pate@gmail.com. And you can reach me by phone at 616-799-0517. I'd be happy to talk to you, and we certainly want to know about any encouragement that you've received from our show, any improvements in your own lives that you've had because of the good information you've been getting. Maybe you need some more information in some certain areas, and if that's the case, I'm happy to help you there too. So if you want to just call and see about getting some more information. Also, you'll see here on my screen the website that you can go to. Many of the books that we talk about on our show are available there to purchase. And we just want to get them out into your hands, and so we've tried to make them very affordable. Most of the books are paperbacks so as to not be too expensive. The CDs are great stories similar to the one you heard today. In fact, you might hear that story on one of those CDs about Bunker Bean. But you know, they're all uplifting things, and they all help encourage us. And you know, if you put those good things in your thoughts and in your mind every day, you know, little by little, you'll feel that change in your heart. You'll feel that attitude change. You'll feel less like Bunker Bean, and you'll feel more like Napoleon. You'll feel like you can make a difference, and you can. I'm here to tell you you can. You can get off that hamster wheel you're on. I've been running on that. I ran on that for years, and I know how you feel. You get up in the morning, and you're just so exhausted, and you put your feet on the floor, and maybe you put one foot on at a time, and you hit the snooze button. And then it goes off again, and you got to go over and put the other foot off. And I got to make it to the coffee pot, and you kind of stagger across to the coffee pot and try and fumble around and make some coffee and get that first couple sips in there. And then you just got to start your day. You got to get on that hamster wheel and run hard again all day long. Whether it's a factory that you work at or an office or wherever you work, whatever it is in your life, you can get off that hamster wheel. You don't have to be there. You just need this new information, and this new information can and will change your life. And so I'm here to encourage you about that. And I want to thank you for listening and let us come into your homes, spend this time with you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on the next show. And hopefully some of this will have been a blessing to you, and Again, I'd like you to drop me a line if you get a chance, or something, or visit my website and kind of look around there. There's a lot of stuff there to look at that can help you in your day-to-day walk, that can help encourage you and lift you up like this. But again, what you put in your mind is going to make such a big difference in how you change your thinking. We are so habit-driven, us people. I think Pastor Gary was kind of talking about that today, about how you doesn't matter what you do, you always wind up going back to your old habits and your old ways. He had a little story about a cat that could walk, and I'll let you listen to that on his show on Heaven Is My Home. But there's a cute little story about how this cat was performing before the king, and somebody else came and let some mice loose in there, and the cat jumped on all fours and went after those mice, because that's what cats do, and so oftentimes that's what happens to us. We determine that we're going to set out and we're going to change our habit patterns, but habits are hard to break and new habits are hard to make. And it takes repetition, and it takes constantly reminding ourselves to have that good attitude. And so many of the CDs that we've got are geared toward that, of helping you keep a good positive perspective and a good attitude, and helping you create new habit patterns and change the way you think and the way you behave. And, we still slip up. I still slip up sometimes. Something happens, somebody cuts me off in traffic, and I got to stomp on my brakes, and then I'm angry, and I say, well, that's nice. No, nice driving, idiot. Well, that's not right. That's not right. You don't know where they've been. You don't know what they're going through. And we need to be gracious. We need to give grace to each other. And when things happen, those new habits will help us change that. Those new habits will help us not get our blood pressure up. That's really not good for us anyway. Anyway, I'm running out of time, and it's really been a pleasure to spend this time with you, and thank you for coming and spending the time with me. And join us again next week on Hope, helping other people excel. God bless you.